I watched my husband sign a billion-dollar deal without hesitation. But ask him to hold our daughter in public? His hands stayed in his pockets. I thought I married a man who loved me. Turns out I married someone who was ashamed of what our love created. Hey, before I tell you how I exposed everything, hit that subscribe button right now. This story gets darker than you think, and you'll want to hear every single word. Trust me, this isn't just about one man's shame. This is about what happens when silence breaks. So let's get into it. My name is Simone, and 3 years ago I thought I was living a fairy tale. I was 32, working as a marketing executive, and I'd built everything myself from the ground up. My parents raised me to believe that hard work and integrity would take me anywhere I wanted to go, and I believed them. I'd climbed the corporate ladder, earned my 6-figure salary, and made a name for myself in an industry that didn't always make room for women like me. Then I met Christopher Bennett at a charity gala. Tech billionaire, 38 years old, the kind of man who walked into rooms and changed the temperature. He found me by the champagne table, and I swear, the way he looked at me made me feel like I was the only woman in the building. We talked for 3 hours straight. He was smart, funny, and he actually listened when I spoke. He didn't just hear me, he paid attention. By the end of the night, he asked for my number, and I gave it to him without playing games. Something about him felt different. Our relationship moved fast. Private dinners at restaurants where chefs knew his name, weekend trips to his lake house, long conversations about everything from politics to poetry. He told me about building his company from nothing, about the pressure of being responsible for thousands of employees, about wanting something real in a world full of fake people. He said I was his peace. He said I was his home. And God help me, I believed every word. 6 months in, he proposed. Not at some flashy public event, but in his living room on a random Tuesday night. Just him, me, a ring that took my breath away, and a promise that we'd build a life together. I said yes before he even finished asking. My friends threw me an engagement party. My mother cried happy tears. Everyone said I'd found my person. I thought I had too, but looking back now I can see the cracks I ignored. His family had concerns about the timing, always the timing, never anything specific. His friends were always mysteriously busy when we tried to make plans together. And the photos. We took so many photos together, but they lived only on his phone, never on social media. He said he wanted to keep us sacred, away from the judgment and noise of the world. He said what we had was too precious to share with strangers. I thought it was romantic. I thought it meant he valued our privacy. I didn't realize he was hiding me. When I got pregnant, Christopher seemed happy. He held me, kissed my stomach, talked about baby names and nursery colors. But within the same conversation, he brought up concerns about optics and timing. He wanted to keep the pregnancy private for safety reasons. He talked about crazy people online, about protecting our family from unwanted attention. It made sense at the time. He was a public figure. I understood the need for boundaries, so I agreed. We kept it quiet. No pregnancy announcement, no baby shower photos online, just us, preparing in private for our daughter to arrive. Nicole came into this world on a Tuesday morning in April, and she was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a head full of dark curly hair, and eyes that looked at both of us like we hung the moon. In those first few weeks at home, Christopher was everything I'd hoped he'd be as a father. He changed diapers at 3 in the morning. He sang to her even though he couldn't carry a tune. He held her against his chest and cried the first time she smiled. I watched him love our daughter, and I felt like the luckiest woman alive. But then something shifted the moment we left the house. The first time I noticed it, we were at a restaurant for brunch. Nicole was 2 months old, sleeping peacefully in her carrier. I asked Christopher to hold her while I went to the restroom, and he hesitated. Just for a second, but I caught it. He said she looked comfortable and shouldn't be disturbed. I brushed it off. But then it happened again at the park. I was pushing the stroller, and I asked if he wanted a turn. He said he'd rather sit on the bench and watch us, that he liked seeing us together. It felt strange, but I told myself I was overthinking. Then came his mother's birthday party, A big family event at their estate. Christopher suggested we leave Nicole with the nanny. He said she was too young for crowds, that all the noise and strangers would be overwhelming for her. It sounded reasonable. So I went alone, smiled through dinner, and answered everyone's polite questions about motherhood while my daughter stayed home with hired help. His sister brought her 3-month-old son. Everyone cooed and passed the baby around. Nobody questioned why Nicole wasn't there, including me. The company holiday party was adults only, he said. Babies didn't belong at corporate events. The charity luncheon was too long for an infant to sit through. The investor dinner was too formal. There was always a reason, always an excuse that sounded just logical enough to quiet the doubt growing in my chest, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. I started paying closer attention. At restaurants, Christopher would walk ahead while I struggled with the stroller and diaper bag. At family gatherings, he'd be across the room while I handled Nicole alone. He never offered to hold her when other people were around. He never introduced her with pride in his voice. And then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. His business partner brought his kids to the office sometimes, and Christopher had no problem scooping up those children for photos. Blonde hair, blue eyes, picture-perfect moments that lived forever on the company's social media pages. But his own daughter? She didn't exist in his public world. The breaking point came at a charity gala for a children's hospital. The irony still burns. We were all dressed up, and I had Nicole in the most beautiful dress. She looked like an angel. A photographer approached us for a family photo, and Christopher said, "Actually, just me. My wife isn't feeling well." I was standing right there, healthy, strong, holding our daughter in my arms. The photographer looked confused but snapped a few shots of Christopher alone. Meanwhile, his business partner's entire family got a 5-photo spread that ended up on the front page of the society section the next morning. That night, I confronted him. I asked him directly why he seemed uncomfortable being seen with Nicole in public. He got defensive, said I was being paranoid, said he wasn't comfortable with public displays of affection, said he wanted to protect her privacy from invasive paparazzi. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I'd watched him operate for 2 years. I knew what pride looked like on his face. I'd seen it when he closed business deals and won awards. I'd never seen it when he looked at our daughter outside our home. I started investigating my own life. I went through every photo from the past 2 years. I counted exactly 0 pictures of us as a complete family that existed anywhere publicly. His social media told a story of a successful, charitable, driven entrepreneur. But it told no story of a husband or father. I was erased. Nicole was erased. We existed only behind closed doors. One afternoon, Christopher left his tablet unlocked on the kitchen counter. I know I shouldn't have looked, but something in my gut told me to. I found discussions on a private business forum about maintaining brand image, an email from an investor that said, "Your personal life is your business, but perception matters in our circles." And Christopher's response, "Understood. Keeping things compartmentalized." I felt sick reading that word. Compartmentalized. Like we were a problem to be managed, a liability to be contained. Then I found the trust fund documents. Christopher had set up a substantial trust for Nicole, which seemed loving on the surface. But buried in the legal language was a stipulation. The funds would only be fully accessible if certain publicity conditions were met. Translation: our daughter would inherit her father's wealth only if she remained invisible, only if she didn't embarrass him, only if she stayed a secret. The final piece fell into place when I overheard a phone conversation. Christopher was in his home office, door slightly open, talking to his publicist. He said, "We've built an image. I can't just suddenly appear with them. We need to strategize this carefully. If this becomes public incorrectly, it affects stock prices and board confidence. Maybe when she's older and it's easier to explain." Easier to explain. Those 3 words broke something in me. Our daughter wasn't his joy. She was his problem. I wasn't his wife. I was his mistake. And he wasn't protecting us from the world. He was protecting the world from us, from her brown skin, from my black face next to his white one. From the reality that his perfect image included a family that didn't fit the story he'd sold to investors, board members, and society pages. I had a choice to make. I could leave quietly, take a settlement, disappear into the background like he clearly wanted. That would have been easier. That would have been safe. But every time I looked at Nicole, I thought about what I'd be teaching her. That she should hide, that she wasn't good enough, that love that only exists in private isn't really love at all, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't let her grow up thinking her father's shame was her fault. So I built a plan. I documented everything. Every date he made an excuse. Every event we were excluded from. Every time he chose his image over his family. I took screenshots of the trust fund stipulation. I saved the emails. I recorded the patterns. I consulted with a lawyer, not for divorce yet, but for strategy. I needed to be smart about this. I needed to make sure that when I spoke, people would listen. Christopher's company held an annual investor summit every year. It was his biggest event. Press from everywhere, live streaming, hundreds of influential people in attendance. And that year, he was receiving a humanitarian award for his charitable work. The speech topic? Family values in modern business. I made sure Nicole and I had tickets, front row seats. I dressed her in the most beautiful outfit. I did her natural hair in perfect braids with colorful beads. She looked absolutely radiant. She looked like exactly what she was, his daughter. When we walked in, Christopher's face went completely white. He tried to redirect us to a family room in the back, said it would be more comfortable. I smiled and said, "We wouldn't miss your big moment for anything." We sat down front and center. Nicole was well behaved, playing quietly with her toys. Christopher kept glancing at us during the preliminaries. I could see him sweating. Then came his speech. He stood at that podium and talked about integrity, about values, about the importance of family in building successful businesses. He said that everything he did was for the next generation, that his legacy wasn't about money, it was about the example he set. The camera panned across the audience, and it caught Nicole reaching her little arms toward the stage, toward him, saying, "Daddy, clear as day." The whole room heard it. The Jumbotron showed her face. Then it showed Christopher's face. He froze mid-sentence. For 5 full seconds, he just stood there staring at us on the screen. The world watched him look at his daughter and turn away. After the speech, press surrounded us, cameras flashing, reporters asking, "Mr. Bennett, is this your family?" He stood there silent, couldn't even form words. So I spoke instead. I said, "Yes. I'm his wife, Simone. This is Nicole, his daughter. We're so proud of him." I smiled for every camera. I held Nicole up so the world could see her beautiful face. And I watched Christopher's carefully constructed walls crumble in real time. The story went viral within hours. At first, the public loved it. Hidden family revealed. Secret daughter. The narrative was almost romantic. His company's stock actually rose. People ate up the idea of a private billionaire finally sharing his personal life. But I wasn't done. 2 days later, I released a statement. With receipts. The trust fund stipulation. The emails about compartmentalizing. The timeline of every event we were excluded from. Screenshots of his social media showing dozens of other people's children but never his own. I laid it all out. And then the real conversation started. The fallout was immediate and brutal. I filed for divorce, demanded full custody. His reputation didn't just take a hit, it was destroyed. Not because he had a black wife and daughter, but because he'd hidden us like we were something to be ashamed of. Brands dropped sponsorships. Board members called for his resignation. The humanitarian award was quietly rescinded. His publicist quit. His carefully built empire started showing cracks. Some people said I went too far, that I weaponized his child, that I should have handled it privately. But here's what those people don't understand. I tried private. I tried quiet conversations and giving him chances to do the right thing. He chose his image every single time. What I did wasn't revenge. It was visibility. It was refusing to let my daughter grow up believing she was someone's secret. Christopher pays child support now. More than enough. But he barely sees Nicole. Supervised visitation, and half the time he doesn't show up. He made his choice. He chose comfort over courage. He chose perception over his own child. And that's something he'll have to live with for the rest of his life. Nicole is 4 now. She's thriving. She knows she's loved. She's confident and bright and completely unaware that her own father once thought she was a liability. I rebuilt my career on my own terms. I'm stronger now than I ever was in that marriage. And I'm teaching my daughter something Christopher never could, that she doesn't have to shrink herself for anyone's comfort, that her existence is not something to apologize for, that she is worthy of being seen. This isn't just my story. This is happening everywhere. Mixed children hidden, black partners kept secret, love that's only real behind closed doors. And we need to talk about it. If this story moved you, if it angered you, if it made you think twice about the relationships around you, don't just scroll past. Subscribe to this channel, share this video, comment below and tell me, would you have stayed silent? Would you have protected his image or your daughter's future? And if you've lived this, if you're living this right now, know that you're not alone. Your story matters. Your babies matter. And nobody, and I mean nobody, deserves to be someone's secret. Now go watch what I post next, because I'm just getting started telling the truth. My husband threw divorce papers at me during his birthday party, calling me a charity case in front of everyone. What he didn't know? I wasn't just some poor girl he rescued. I was the CEO who held his entire empire in my hands. And tomorrow, I'd prove it. If you've ever been underestimated, stick around. This is my story of the ultimate comeback. And before we get started, hit that subscribe button and the bell icon because you won't want to miss what happens next. Trust me, this gets wild. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and immediately know you don't belong? That was me. Standing in the corner of my own husband's birthday party, watching him laugh with people who looked at me like I was the help. The penthouse was packed with tech billionaires, socialites, and influencers. Everyone was dressed in designer everything, dripping in jewelry that cost more than most people make in a year. And there I was, in a simple black dress from a department store, holding a glass of champagne I hadn't touched. My husband, Trevor, was holding court in the center of the room. 40 years old today, and he looked like he owned the world. In his mind, he did. He was the founder of Summit Tech, and everyone knew his name. But what they didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that his entire empire was about to crumble, and I was the only one who could save it, or destroy it. I watched him lean in close to her. Brooke, his mistress, she was everything I pretended not to be. Tall, glamorous, wearing a dress that probably cost $20,000. Her laugh was loud and performative, making sure everyone noticed her. And trust me, they did, especially when Trevor's hand found the small of her back and stayed there. I should have left right then, but something kept me frozen in place. Maybe I wanted to see how far he would go. Maybe I was tired of pretending. Maybe I just needed to witness the moment that would finally set me free. Trevor clinked his glass, calling for everyone's attention. My stomach dropped. I knew that look on his face, that smug, self-satisfied smile that said he was about to do something he thought was clever. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight," he started, his voice booming across the room. 40 years old. Can you believe it? And I've spent the last 5 of those years married to a woman who taught me a valuable lesson. People were smiling, expecting some sweet tribute. I knew better. "She taught me that charity has its limits," he continued, and the room went quiet. I thought I was doing a good thing, you know? Marrying someone from nothing, giving her a better life, but here's what I learned: you can't build an empire with dead weight. Someone gasped. Brooke was smiling, and Trevor pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "Angela," he called out, finding me in the corner. Every head turned. "These are divorce papers. I'm setting us both free. You can go back to whatever simple life you came from, and I can finally build the life I deserve." He said it like he was doing me a favor, like I should thank him. The papers hit my chest and fell to the floor. I didn't bend down to pick them up. I just looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw a man who had no idea what was coming, a man who thought he knew everything but understood nothing. I walked out of that penthouse with my head high. I didn't cry. Not yet. I made it to my car, parked 3 blocks away because I never wanted Trevor to see what I actually drove. I sat behind the wheel of my Honda Civic, the car I kept specifically for this double life, and that's when the tears came. 5 years. 5 years of playing small. 5 years of letting him think he saved me. 5 years of biting my tongue while he explained basic business concepts to me like I was a child. And for what? To prove that someone could love me for me, not for my money? Well, I proved it, all right. He didn't love me at all. I wiped my tears and pulled out my phone. My assistant, Nina, answered on the first ring. "It's time," I said, my voice steady. "Schedule the meeting for tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp. And Nina, make sure Trevor's team confirms. This deal closes tomorrow one way or another. Let me back up. Let me tell you who I really am. My name is Angela Hartwell, and I'm the CEO and founder of Hartwell Industries. Maybe you've heard of us. Maybe you haven't. We're not flashy. We don't make apps or social media platforms. We build the infrastructure that makes the digital world possible. Server farms, data centers, fiber optic networks. The boring stuff that nobody thinks about but everyone needs. And we're worth $50 billion. I built it from nothing. Foster care kid, worked 3 jobs through college, started my company at 25 with a $15,000 small business loan. I made my first million at 27, first billion at 32. By the time I met Trevor, I was one of the most powerful women in tech, and absolutely exhausted. You know what comes with money like that? Vultures. Everyone wants something. Everyone has an angle. I couldn't tell who liked me and who liked my bank account. Dating was a nightmare. Every man either wanted to use me or felt threatened by me. I was so tired of being Angela Hartwell, CEO. I just wanted to be Angela. Just a woman, just a person. So I created her. Simple Angela. The girl who worked as a server at charity events, the girl with a modest apartment and a practical car, the girl who clipped coupons and worried about bills. That Angela met Trevor at a fundraiser where I was undercover, checking out potential business partners while pretending to serve drinks. He thought he was so smooth, slipping me his number, telling me I was too beautiful to be serving champagne. He had no idea I owned a 20% stake in the charity hosting the event. He asked me out, and I said yes. Not because I was swept away, but because he seemed kind, normal. He didn't know who I was, which meant he couldn't want me for what I had. We dated for 6 months before he proposed. He told me he wanted to take care of me, give me a better life. I said yes because I thought I'd found something real. Someone who loved plain Angela, not powerful Angela Hartwell. I kept my worlds separate. My core business team knew the truth, but they signed ironclad NDAs. I had my small apartment where Trevor would visit, my Honda Civic, my carefully modest wardrobe. Meanwhile, my real home sat empty across town. A sprawling estate I'd bought with cash, my real closet full of custom suits, my real cars in a garage Trevor never knew existed. For 5 years I lived 2 lives, and it was exhausting. But I told myself it was worth it. I was protecting something precious. I was keeping love pure. Except it wasn't love. Not really. Because Trevor didn't love me. He loved the idea of me. The charity case he rescued, the grateful woman who owed him everything. He loved feeling superior. And I let him because I was so desperate to believe that someone could love me without an agenda. But here's what I learned during those 5 years. While Trevor was parading me around as his pet project, his company was failing. Summit Tech had been riding high when we met, but Trevor wasn't as smart as he thought he was. Bad investments, poor management, ego-driven decisions that cost millions. By year 3 of our marriage, his company was hemorrhaging money. By year 4, he was in serious trouble. And by year 5, he was months away from bankruptcy. I knew all of it. You don't build a $50 billion empire without knowing every major player in your industry. I had analysts tracking Summit Tech. I knew about every bad quarter, every failed product launch, every desperate pivot. I watched Trevor come home stressed, snapping at me, taking out his failures on the woman he thought was too simple to understand. I could have helped him. One conversation, one revelation. "Hey, honey, funny thing. I actually run the largest infrastructure company in the world, and I could solve all your problems." But he never asked. He never confided in me. He just patted my head and told me not to worry about things I couldn't understand. And then came the deal. The $12 billion contract with a mystery company that could save Summit Tech. Trevor had been chasing it for months, not knowing he'd been chasing me. My company, Hartwell Industries. The irony was delicious. His salvation had been sleeping next to him every night. I woke up the morning after that birthday party in my real bed, my real home. I stood in my real closet and selected a charcoal gray suit that cost more than Trevor spent on Brooke's birthday gift last month. I had my hair and makeup done by my regular team. And I looked in the mirror at the woman I'd been hiding for 5 years, Angela Hartwell, CEO Billionaire, the woman who built an empire while everyone underestimated her. Nina met me in my office at 7 a.m. We went over the contract terms one final time. Everything was in order. Everything was perfect. Trevor's team had confirmed, 9 a.m., final signing of the biggest deal of his career, the deal that would save his company. "How do you want to play this?" Nina asked me, concern in her eyes. She'd been with me since the beginning. She'd watched me create this double life and had questioned it more than once. "Professionally," I said. "This is business." Just business. But we both knew it was more than that. At 8:45, I got the call that Trevor and his team had arrived. They were in the main conference room, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, the one designed to intimidate. I made them wait, not out of spite, just because I could. At 9:03, I walked into that conference room with my legal team behind me, and I watched Trevor's face go through every emotion a human can experience in 5 seconds flat. Confusion, recognition, shock, disbelief, and finally, absolute horror. "Hello, Trevor," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Shall we discuss this $12 billion deal?" He couldn't speak. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. His vice president of operations kept looking between us, trying to understand what was happening. And Brooke, who'd apparently decided she belonged in this business meeting, had gone completely pale. Angela, what?" Trevor finally managed. "Miss Hartwell, please," I corrected him. "In this building, it's Miss Hartwell. Now, if you've reviewed the contract terms, we can proceed with the signing." I watched him piece it together, the company name he'd been hearing for months. Hartwell Industries, my middle name and last name. The mysterious CEO no one had ever met in person. The $50 billion empire that seemed to appear out of nowhere. It was me. It had always been me. You own this company?" Trevor's voice was barely a whisper. "I built this company," I corrected, "from the ground up, started it 12 years ago, 3 years before we met." His lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently. Trevor waved him off, still staring at me like I was a ghost. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. I smiled. "You never asked. You were too busy explaining to me how business works." The meeting proceeded because it had to. My lawyers presented the contract. Trevor's team tried to focus, but everyone could feel the tension. I went through every clause, every term, every condition, and I watched Trevor realize that I held all the cards. The deal was fair, harsh but fair. His company would survive, but barely. He'd have to give up significant control, accept terms that would have made him walk away if he had any other option, but he didn't have another option, and we both knew it. "Your company is $14 million in debt," I said, sliding a folder across the table. "You've been hiding it well, but not well enough. You have 6 months before your major creditors call those loans. This deal is the only thing standing between Summit Tech and bankruptcy." Trevor looked at the documents, numbers he thought were secret, laid out in black and white. "I could have helped you," I continued. "At any point in the last 2 years, I could have stepped in, but you never came to me. You never saw me as someone who could understand, let alone solve your problems. You saw me as your charity project." Brooke spoke up then, her voice shrill. "This is insane. Trevor, let's just go. We don't need this deal." I turned to her. "Ms. Carson, with all due respect, you're not part of this negotiation. And yes, Trevor absolutely needs this deal. Without it, Summit Tech closes by March, which means his net worth drops by about 98%. I hope you love him for him, because the private jets and penthouse are about to disappear." She shut up fast, and I saw doubt creep into her eyes, the kind of doubt that told me exactly what kind of woman she was. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, turning back to Trevor. "You're going to sign this contract. In return, I'm going to save your company. I'm also going to sign those divorce papers you threw at me last night. We'll split our assets, which is adorable since I have approximately 400 times more wealth than you do. But I'll be fair. You keep the penthouse, your cars, your pride. Angela, I'm not finished, I interrupted. I'll keep your secrets. Your investors won't hear from me about how close you came to losing everything. The press won't get leaked documents about your company's real financial situation. You get to keep your reputation, but in return, you sign this deal, you sign the divorce papers, and you give me one thing. What? He asked, and he sounded broken. An apology, I said. A real one, not because you got caught, not because you need this deal, but because you treated someone who loved you like she was worthless. You made me feel small when I was standing right there as your equal. You threw away 5 years because you couldn't see past your own ego. The room was silent. Trevor's team looked at their hands. Brooke was texting someone, probably already looking for her exit strategy. And Trevor looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time ever. I'm sorry, he whispered. Angela, I'm sorry. I was cruel. I was blind. I was everything you're saying, and you deserved so much better. I nodded. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. Sign the contract, Trevor. He signed. That was 3 months ago. Trevor's company survived barely. He's no longer the golden boy of tech. He's humbled, diminished, but still standing. Brooke left him 2 weeks after the signing, when she realized his billionaire status was greatly exaggerated. I heard she's dating a cryptocurrency founder now. Good luck to him. As for me, I stepped into the light. Angela Hartwell, CEO of Hartwell Industries, no longer hiding. The media had a field day. Secret CEO lived double life for 5 years. Tech billionaire hid identity from husband. The think pieces wrote themselves, but I didn't care about the headlines. I cared about waking up in my real home, wearing my real clothes, living my real life. I took meetings as myself. I spoke at conferences. I let myself be powerful, publicly, unapologetically. And you know what I learned? The right people aren't intimidated by your power. The right people celebrate it. I'm dating again, but this time as myself, full self. And it's terrifying and exhilarating and real in a way that 5 years with Trevor never was. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it, hiding who I was, wasting 5 years, the humiliation at that party. And here's the truth. I don't regret the lesson. I needed to learn that dimming your light doesn't make you more lovable. It just attracts people who prefer you dim. Trevor didn't fall in love with me. He fell in love with a version of me that made him feel superior. And I let him, because I was so afraid that the real me was too much. Too successful, too powerful, too intimidating. But too much for the wrong person is just right for the right person. I'm not hiding anymore. Not my success, not my wealth, not my power. I built an empire, and I'm not apologizing for it. I'm a black woman in tech who started with nothing and built everything. And if that intimidates you, that's your problem, not mine. The best revenge isn't crushing someone. It's becoming so undeniably yourself that their opinion stops mattering. Trevor threw divorce papers at me thinking he was setting himself free. What he actually did was set me free. And I've never been more powerful. So that's my story. Sometimes the person who underestimates you the most is the one who needs you the most. They just don't know it yet. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment below telling me about a time someone underestimated you. And if you believe in living your truth and never dimming your light for anyone, smash that like button. Subscribe for more stories of comebacks, revenge, and women who refuse to be counted out. I'm reading every comment, and your story might just be featured in the next video. Until next time, remember, know your worth and never let anyone convince you you're less than extraordinary. My husband thought I was too stupid to notice. Every Friday night, same excuse. Business trip, baby. But his cologne changed. His smile changed. And when I found out he was spending my weekends with his ex-wife, oh, honey, I didn't get mad. I got the deed to the house. Before I tell you how I took everything he thought was his, hit that subscribe button. Because by the end of this story, you're gonna learn exactly how an underestimated black woman turns betrayal into a billion-dollar lesson. Now let me tell you how this whole mess started. My name is Lauren, and 3 years ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I was 32, running my own marketing firm, making good money, living my best life in a nice condo downtown. I wasn't looking for a man, and I definitely wasn't looking for a billionaire. But that's exactly what walked into my life at a charity gala I was hosting for one of my clients. Derek Morrison, 6'2", salt and pepper hair, custom suit that probably cost more than my car payment, and a smile that made you forget he was 15 years older than you. He owned half the commercial real estate in 3 states, and when he walked up to me and said, "You're the most intelligent woman in this room, and I haven't even heard you speak yet," I should have known something was off. Men like that always know exactly what to say. But y'all, I fell for it. We started dating, and it was like something out of a movie. Private jets to Paris for dinner, shopping sprees where he'd buy out entire boutiques. He loved showing me off, always had his hand on my waist at events, introducing me to mayors and senators and people whose names I'd only seen in Forbes magazine. 6 months later, he proposed with a ring so big I needed physical therapy for my hand. I'm joking, but barely. We got married in this beautiful ceremony at his estate, this massive 12-bedroom mansion that looked like something from MTV Cribs. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, a kitchen bigger than my old apartment. And he put my name on the deed, said it was our home, our future, our life together. I remember thinking, "Girl, you made it." My mama cried happy tears. My friends were jealous in that proud way, and I genuinely believed I'd found my forever. But 3 months into marriage, things started feeling different. Derek started taking these weekend business trips. Every single Friday, like clockwork, he'd pack a bag and tell me he had investor meetings or property inspections or some deal that needed his personal attention. Friday evening, he'd kiss me goodbye. Sunday night, he'd come back tired and distant, smelling like expensive hotels and something I couldn't quite place. At first, I didn't think much of it. The man was a billionaire, right? Billionaires work differently. They don't have 9-to-5 schedules. They take meetings on yachts and close deals on golf courses. That's what I told myself every Friday when I watched him pack his Louis Vuitton weekender bag with outfits that seemed too nice for business meetings. My best friend Tracy was the first one to say something. We were having brunch one Sunday, and I mentioned how Derek was gone again. She put down her mimosa and looked at me with those eyes that say, "Girl, I love you, but you're being stupid." She said, "Lauren, what kind of business happens every single weekend? And why can't you ever go with him?" I laughed it off, but her words stuck with me like gum on a shoe. I started paying closer attention. The way his assistant Brenda would get all nervous and stuttery when I'd call asking about Derek's schedule. The way he'd turn his phone face down when I walked into the room. The way he started buying new cologne, something fresher and younger than what he usually wore. And then I found the receipt. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I was just moving his jacket to hang it up properly because I'm that wife who actually cares about things staying nice. The receipt fell out of the inner pocket. Dinner for 2 at Le Bernardin, $473, on a Friday night. The same Friday he told me he was inspecting a property in Boston. That's when my intuition kicked into overdrive. See, us black women, we have this thing. This sixth sense. This knowing in our gut when something ain't right, and every cell in my body started screaming that my husband was lying to me. But I didn't confront him. No. I'm not the type to go off on emotions and accusations. I'm the type who gathers evidence and builds a case. I hired a private investigator named Ramon. Cost me $3,000, but honey, it was the best investment I ever made. I told Ramon I needed to know where my husband really went every weekend, who he was with, and what he was doing. Ramon said he'd have answers in 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were the hardest of my life. I had to keep playing the loving wife, smiling when Derek kissed me goodbye on Fridays, asking about his trips when he came home on Sundays, pretending everything was perfect while my stomach was in knots wondering what Ramon was going to find. When Ramon finally called me, his voice was careful, gentle even. He said, "Mrs. Morrison, I have the photos. You might want to be sitting down when you look at them. I poured myself a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and clicked on the file he'd emailed me. The first photo made my breath catch. Derek wasn't at any business meeting. He was at a beach house in the Hamptons, walking hand in hand with a white woman I recognized from the photos in his office that he'd casually explained away as old friends. Christine, his ex-wife. The woman he told me he'd been divorced from for 5 years, the woman he said he barely spoke to anymore except about paperwork and logistics. But these photos told a different story. There they were, having candlelit dinners on the deck, laughing over breakfast, walking on the beach at sunset like some kind of romance novel cover, and then there were photos of them with a teenage girl, Christine's daughter, from before she married Derek. They looked like a family, a happy, complete family. I scrolled through dozens of photos, each one a knife in my heart. Derek tucking the daughter into bed, Derek kissing Christine on the forehead, Derek grilling burgers while Christine set the table. This wasn't an affair. This was a whole separate life. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I felt like the stupidest woman alive. How did I not see this? How did I let myself believe his lies? And then the anger came. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold, calculating kind. The dangerous kind. I started digging into our finances. Since we were married, I had access to all the accounts. And what I found made everything so much worse. Derek had never really divorced Christine, not financially anyway. He was paying her $50,000 a month in alimony, but now I understood it wasn't alimony at all. It was household money. He was supporting 2 homes, 2 wives, 2 lives, and that beach house? The one I saw in the photos? I recognized it. We'd visited it once early in our relationship, and Derek said he was thinking about renovating it. I'd loved the place, and even helped him pick out new furniture and decor. I'd used my year-end bonus to pay for custom kitchen cabinets he said he couldn't liquidate assets for at the moment. I'd literally helped fund his love nest with his ex-wife. The betrayal was complete. And then I found out something even worse. Derek's business partners had pushed him to marry me. They thought his image needed updating. Younger wife, successful in her own right, beautiful black woman on his arm made him look modern and progressive. I wasn't his love story. I was his PR strategy. I cried for one night. Just one. And then I got on the phone with my cousin Denise, who happens to be one of the best family law attorneys in the state. I told her everything. She listened quietly, and when I finished, she said, "Lauren, baby, we're about to take this man for everything he's got." Denise explained the law to me like I was studying for the bar exam. The mansion was purchased after we got married, which made it marital property. My name was on the deed because Derek's accountant said it was better for taxes. That was his first mistake. The second mistake? Our prenuptial agreement was never properly notarized. Derek's fancy lawyer had messed up the paperwork, which meant the prenup was invalid. Everything he thought was protected was actually fair game. We spent 2 weeks building an airtight case. Ramon got me more photos, more evidence, months' worth of documentation. I recorded Derek's phone calls where he'd lie to me about where he was going. I gathered bank statements showing the payments to Christine. I documented every lie, every trip, every betrayal. And I kept smiling. I kept playing the perfect wife. Derek had no idea I knew anything. I'd kiss him goodbye on Fridays and welcome him home on Sundays. I'd ask about his business trips and listen to his elaborate lies with a straight face. Inside, I was a volcano about to erupt, but outside, I was calm water. Then I overheard a phone call that changed everything. Derek was in his office and I was walking past to get something from the bedroom. I heard him say, "Just a few more months, Christine, and we can go public. I'll divorce Lauren quietly, keep the assets protected, and we can finally stop hiding." They were planning to remarry. Publicly this time. And Derek thought he was going to divorce me and keep everything. The audacity, the absolute disrespect. But you know what? That phone call was the final piece of evidence I needed. The next Friday came like any other. Derek packed his bag, kissed me at the door, told me he loved me and would see me Sunday night. I hugged him tight and said, "Have a wonderful weekend, baby. I hope you get everything you deserve." He smiled and walked out. He had no idea what was about to hit him. The second his car left the driveway, I made the call. Denise arrived 30 minutes later with her legal team. We filed for divorce with a petition for full custody of marital assets, citing adultery, fraud, and emotional abuse. We filed a restraining order based on financial deception and mental cruelty. Every document was airtight, every claim backed by evidence. Then came the fun part. I'd hired movers the week before. They came and packed up every single thing Derek owned. Clothes, shoes, watches, golf clubs, that ugly, abstract painting he loved, everything. It all went into a storage unit I'd rented in his name. I changed every lock on every door of the mansion. I had the gate codes reprogrammed. I even had the garage door openers reset. By Saturday afternoon, the mansion was legally mine under the restraining order, and Derek's belongings were in a climate-controlled unit on the other side of town. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on the balcony overlooking the pool, and waited for Sunday evening. Derek called me at 7 p.m. Sunday, confused because the gate code wasn't working. "Hey baby, the code's not working. Can you buzz me in?" I let the phone ring 3 times before I answered. Then, in the calmest voice I could manage, I said, "Oh, Derek, honey, you sound confused. Let me help you understand what's happening. You're homeless." The silence on the other end was delicious. Then he exploded. "What?" "Lauren, what are you talking about? Open the gate." I took a sip of my wine and said, "I can't do that, sweetheart. There's a restraining order. You're not allowed within 500 feet of this property. Your things are in storage. The address is in your email, along with the divorce papers and a detailed list of every weekend you spent with Christine instead of your actual wife." He started yelling about how it was his house, his money, his property. I let him rant until he ran out of breath, and then I said something I'd been rehearsing all week. "Actually, Derek, it's our house. Was our house. Now it's my house. See, that prenup your expensive lawyer drew up? Never properly notarized, which means it's worthless. And this mansion? Purchased during our marriage with marital funds. My name is on the deed, and you committed adultery, which I can prove with about 400 photos and 3 months of bank statements. So no, baby, you don't get to come home. You get to figure out where you're sleeping tonight, because it sure as hell isn't here." I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from pure adrenaline and satisfaction. Derek tried to fight it, of course. He hired 3 different lawyers, each one more expensive than the last, but Denise was better. Every motion he filed, we countered with evidence. Every claim he made, we disproved with documentation. The judge, a no-nonsense black woman in her 60s, looked at all the evidence and ruled in my favor on almost everything. The media got hold of the story, and suddenly I was everywhere. Billionaire's secret double life exposed. Wife outsmarts cheating husband, takes mansion. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with interview requests. Christine tried to do damage control, claiming she didn't know Derek was still married, but those photos of them playing happy family told a different story. Derek's business partners started distancing themselves. Turns out, publicly humiliating your wife and getting caught living a double life isn't great for business relationships. His company's stock dropped. Investors got nervous. And Christine, realizing Derek couldn't support her lifestyle anymore, actually sued him for emotional fraud. The mess he made of his life was almost poetic. The final settlement came through 6 months later. I got the mansion, 60% of the liquid marital assets, his Tesla, the boat I'd always loved, and a formal apology read into court record. Derek kept his struggling business and the privilege of explaining to everyone why he threw away his marriage for weekend getaways. The best part? Christine's daughter, that teenage girl I saw in the photos, actually reached out to me on social media. She said she was sorry, that she didn't know her mom and Derek were hurting me, and that she thought I deserved better. We got coffee once, and I told her none of it was her fault. Kids don't ask to be caught in adult drama, so that's how I went from the wife to the only wife who mattered. Derek wanted his ex every weekend. Now he can have her every day, in a 2-bedroom apartment across town while they figure out how to split a Netflix subscription. Meanwhile, I'm in this mansion, running my business better than ever, sipping wine on the balcony he thought he'd keep forever. The lesson here isn't about revenge. It's about knowing your worth and protecting yourself. When something feels wrong, trust that feeling. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. And always, always read the fine print. Never underestimate a Black woman who knows her worth. We don't get loud, we get lawyers. We don't get mad, we get everything. If this story taught you anything about protecting yourself and standing up for what's yours, drop a comment telling me what you would have done differently. Hit that subscribe button because next week, I'm telling you about the time Derek's business partner tried to slide in my DMs after the divorce, and honey, that story is even messier. Smash that like button if you believe in getting exactly what you deserve, and remember, read every contract, trust your gut, and never let anyone make you feel small. Until next time, protect your peace and your assets.